Do you have a tendency to be haunted by your past, by the decisions that you've made? Do you get filled with regret or feel like you've wasted your time? I'm going to be explaining kind of the dangers of this and then what you can do to change it. And I'm going to be giving you some actionable items in order to implement this. Before we get started though, my name is Adam. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I just want to let you know I'm doing some free breakthrough calls. There is a link for these calls pinned in the comment section below. So what is a breakthrough call? Okay, so a breakthrough call is a call where we get on Zoom and I go over your vision for your life with you. So we look at what you're inspired to create, what you're excited about, and then we get into what's been blocking you, what's stopping you from taking action, or when you take action, what comes up and stops you from actually creating the reality. And then I help you find and look at some options that can help you shift to get clarity and finally work your way up to freedom to do what you want with your life. Okay, so our past is a very important thing to look at. We don't want to get stuck in our past, but it's kind of paradoxical because if we are stuck in our past, then we kind of need to look at our past to unhook ourselves from it. The majority of our pain comes from perceptions, traumas, imprints, and stories that we experienced before that we haven't either realized our way out of or let go of, that are still imprinting on present time. Now this manifests in two ways, and in a minute I'm going to get into what you can do about it, but this manifests in two ways. The first way is that we as co-creative electromagnetic beings will call in the same patterns over and over and over again. We'll call in the same boss, the same type of partner, because they have the same energetic pattern as our mother, our father, the old boss, whatever, wherever the origin of that imprint came from, and we haven't shifted out of it, so we're just drawing it in. The other way this manifests is, even if we don't draw in the same pattern, because we're so stuck in that lens of perception, we'll just perceive the person or the situation as the same. And sometimes this can be dangerous because, we can misread a text and be like, oh my God, this person's rejecting me, or this person is doing whatever, and then react to it, take an action, a reactionary action, and kind of mess something up a little bit when it wasn't what was going on because we were still responding to the trauma from our past. Okay. Now the trick with the past is we tend to think that certain things happened in a particular way. This is the art of the story. We have a story about what happened in our childhood. And I'm not saying these aren't convincing stories. Obviously, if you were molested or beaten, that's a very significant story. But we still have a story about what it meant, why it happened, what actually happened. And all of that is keeping us in the life that we have now. The thing with reality is it's all based on perception. It's all based on the lens that you're viewing your reality through. And that lens perceives the past, the future, and the present the same. It's like if you think of a camera and you have a particular lens on the camera, it doesn't matter if you're pointing it straight or left or right, or if you're filming Canada or if you're filming, Brazil. If there's a stain on the lens or it looks a certain way, all of it is going to be filtered through that lens. When you change the lens, everything that you're looking at then changes. So what do you do in order to begin to release your past, which also changes your present, which also changes your future? So the first thing you want to do, not necessarily excessively, but you want to review it. You want to begin to look at what happened? And what are the stories that I'm telling? Because I have this belief that, as a child, I was yelled at all the time because I was bad. And I kind of forgot about that. But somewhere deep in my consciousness, I walk around all the time now and feel like I'm just bad. And then anytime somebody, speaks a little loud to me, regardless of what their intention is, I perceive that I'm bad and I'm in trouble again. But that's actually not what's going on. And the power of your imagination is such that you can take it into the past and change what went on then. Because there's no ultimate objective truth. It's all subjective. The next thing you can do, and this connects to number 1, is as you're reviewing your past, find the patterns that are repeating. Do you call in, narcissistic partners over and over and over again? Do you call in jobs that you hate that make you feel drained and exhausted? How do you react at these jobs? What are your behavioral patterns? Do you tend to feel deflated? Do you avoid speaking up? Do you not stand up for yourself? Do you get treated disrespectfully and never get a raise when you deserve it, but never ask for one? Do you never have the willingness or courage to leave when it's not right for you? What is your part in the situation within the pattern? Because one of the ways you change the pattern is to do something different, but the other way you change the pattern leads me to number 3, which is finding where in your past this pattern came from and the story that you're telling about it. So if you're always at a job and you're always accepting less money than you're worth, and it is time for a raise or you've worked yourself up to a raise, where in your past are you telling the story that you're not, worthy of the amount of money that you want? So like say you had an example of, I don't know, maybe as a kid, you wanted, I don't know if you had allowance or money from your parents to do things that were fun, and they didn't give it to you, and you developed a story that you weren't worth it, or you didn't deserve it. That may not be true at all. And on some level, none of it's true if you decide it's not anymore. You could then tell the story that, well, they didn't give it to you because maybe they were stingy, or they were, trying to teach you a lesson in discipline that maybe you needed to learn and maybe you didn't need to learn. Maybe they just felt you needed to learn it, but they weren't really in alignment with themselves. And as you start to reframe this story, you start to release all the attachment and emotions and patterns that you have to it in the now. And then you start to see how you were never really this person, and you're changing your past and changing your present and therefore changing your future. So it's a combination of telling a different story after you find the pattern and then taking a new action in alignment with that new person. And I'm going to quickly tell a story to illustrate this about this pattern that I've had my whole life of wanting to be great. So as a very little kid, I was always drawn to great people. Whether it was John Lennon or I liked the great artists, John Lennon, Robin Williams, Bill Hicks, but I also was kind of as part of my life path, this was something I was working toward. And, when I would have to read books for school, my mother always kind of would pick these books for me of these great sort of leaders, whether it was JFK or Martin Luther King. These were always figures that were just kind of in my energy field, and I was kind of led to sort of emulate in a way. But what's happened over the course of my life is I've had this belief that I need to be great. I have to be great. And so much strain and pain and awfulness has come from wanting to be great. I have drawn in challenge after challenge after challenge, and things would never really shift. and kind of kick over into the better life or into the successful pattern. I would repeat the same things over and over and over and over again and get these like tiny little variations of the same lesson. Now, why was this happening? This would happen with performance. It would happen with dating and romance, just the same thing for years, ad nauseum. Well, because I had this story that I need to become great. And then I had a belief of what great was, which was filtered through sort of our 3D, action-based reality of going through constant struggle and challenge, coupled with the belief that I'm not great because I need to become great. So then I would just loop over and over and over again in struggle, in torment, in torture, in like repeating like the first grade a bazillion times until I was perfect, all because of my perception. And then I went into drug addiction as a teenager. And so then I looked back at my drug addiction and decided that, I had made a mistake and I wasn't disciplined. And I failed. And so I would invalidate my entire past through this lens of needing to become great and therefore not being great. So the way that I have to shift this, or that I get to shift this, is to look at, this is kind of Byron Katie stuff, how I feel when I have that belief, what my patterns and behavior patterns are because of that belief, whether or not I'm ready to let it go yet, how it serves me to have it. And the way it served me to have this was, deep down, it's like I would have to push and push and push and push and try to force myself to be great, because I believed ultimately that the power of the universe was mine. And so when I would push and force things, I got to continue to hold on to the belief that the power was mine, instead of realizing that it's not mine, it's something that flows through me. And then the shift to this belief is to see how I already am great. And we all already are great. So going into the drug addiction, coming out of the drug addiction, all of the things that I've already done in terms of healing, in terms of performance, in terms of what I've learned from failing and, almost relationships, I already was great that entire time. And then when I see that, I start to embody that energy, and then, I can shift into that. But I also don't need to do it anymore. I'm not forcing it. I'm not needing to be great because I'm not good enough already. And when we really shift these perspectives deeply through reviewing our past and reframing our entire past and all the examples through these lenses, that's when you start to let go of regret. That's when you stop invalidating your entire past and creating more trauma and struggle for you in the future because you're beating yourself up for your past. It doesn't really come down to action. It really doesn't. Action is important. Action is very important to take new action in alignment with the new perception of self, but you have to shift the perception first, or your actions are just based out of the old lens and the old trauma patterns. It's a combination of both. You can't sit around and do nothing. You do need to take new actions, but ultimately, the highest level of shift occurs in your perspective and your thought and how you view your past and therefore your present and your future. So hopefully this helps. Let me know how this goes. Please leave any comments below. I have a free energy clearing in the description as well. Other than that, thank you so much. I look forward to next time, and bye-bye.